Hello! So I thought I'd start this sunny Sunday afternoon with some updates about XVE and the application and some pieces I've done with the game. Now, the game itself, very fluid at the moment. Since I'm rereading Red Storm Rising, there's all sorts of ideas changing. But key new pieces of technology I've got is geometry shaders running debug cubes for me, so I can put a point in space and the geometry shader produces me a bounding box around it. They're only AABB right now, but it's fine. Obviously this is still my center axis point, just so I can center the world. But you'll notice the, well, undulating seascape below me. So if we go up and just tilt the camera a bit, it's flat shaded, but it's flat shaded per triangle, but it's feathered across the triangles. This is because I'm not changing the lighting model as I'm doing it to keep it very, very cheap. This is to keep it sort of almost available for any machine. You'll also notice the obvious low poly sky. So this is just a sky dome that I then gradient color down to the horizon, and we can actually have full control over this. If I can find the sea manager, we can change the color of the sea live in the scene. And if I can change the sky manager, so I can actually select different skies. Let me actually select the morning sky. You'll see it gradients down to the morning. We get a tropical sky. This is the default sky. We can actually create different ones, so I can start with an apex that's, say, bright red, and a horizon that's deeply green, and then just create, I actually need to give it a name. There's a bug. I love a live bug, but it's all fine. Let me go back into the sky manager, back into sky dome creation, make the apex bright red, make the horizon deep green, give it a name, poo, create the sky dome, and we should be able to select poo. There we go. So there is a sky dome. So all that crash was that there was nothing in this field. I need to give it a name. I need to make sure that Create Sky Dome doesn't have an empty name there, because an empty name for a mesh is invalid for me. There is also for this fogging. We actually can fog to the horizon color. So fogging applies on a shader. So if we, I can't remember the key code now, but there's a key to create fogged fog things. Fog. Create fog objects. Oh, it's actually a ImGui button. I'm being silly. Oh, there it is. There. So there's the fog test buttons, and they're actually going to fog themselves into the distance. So let's reduce that distance, and you'll see they fog themselves at this range. So we can control the horizon fogging out. You know, so kind of a very foggy, literally a very foggy day. Like the fog is close to the camera, you just set it to sort of 1 meter. These are meter values. Otherwise, we push the fog out to actually give us a performance check. And the shader will, the CPU side will respect just beyond the fog distance and not draw the objects anymore. It also does frustum culling, so anything that's not in the frustum does not get drawn, though you can't really tell that from here. The only two objects that ignore frustum culling are the skybox and the sea. But as you'll probably see, the sea is sort of twitching. So this is a problem I'm working on next. So now I've got objects in the scene. I want the sea to remain smooth even when I am scrolling about, and I want it to not be centered on the player. So at the moment the camera is effectively the player, and you'll see the sky dome stays centered on the player. But the sea can't do that. It has to scroll past the player. So I need to create something a bit more manageable, a bit more useful. The other things I want to do is really the high quality sea only needs to be quite close up, and basically I'm not happy with the sea, so I'm still working on it. I'm happy with the sky. I quite like the sky. I like the low poly sky. but we'll see what's going on there from there on. All the creation of the map stuff, there you go. So that's all. Don't worry about that. The map stuff is turned off. There is no map. So what I was going to do was drive the gameplay via the sort of main map of the world, generating stuff up front, and this is why I've got sort of noise texturing built into the engine. So this would have created a height map for a terrain, but I'm just not sold on it right now. So I turn this down in detail and generate again. You'll see the same noise but with less detail, and finally really no detail. This is just the number of octaves in the noise. Turn it up, you get really fractured noise. And I couldn't really happily make myself deal with this for the low poly landscape I wanted to create. So that's why I did the seaplane first. But the seaplane itself was just a way of experimenting with vertex alteration in the vertex shader. So I'm actually passing in a time uniform, and I'm moving the vertex around on a sine cosine waveform. But yeah, not happy with it. So all this functionality, where does it lead me to? Well, it leads me to that point where I now need to sit down and start thinking about the actual game. And if I go to my desktop, open the planning, you'll see that I have this massive thought diagram. So these are the things I'm doing. The green are things that I've worked on. So the green, if we come in, we'll see that the debug cube system was done. The work that I did on it was these individual tasks. This is all done with dot. So I have a big dot document that I just keep each section and work on through it. And then I regenerate. The reason is I don't want anything stored online. This is just all local to me, and I can store the revisions of each of these each time I generate it. So you'll see the ground is just not required. Mouse handling is yet. They're yellows because they're things I want to look at next, but you'll see that there's all sorts of stuff not included in here. Yellows are things I've spotted along the line that I need to do, basically. So mouse handling, adding logging here, adding logging there. So logging is something I'm going to look at next. Bugs come up here as a big red. So I'd need to add the ImGui crash of the name when you're creating a sky as a bug here. So I've not added sun. I've not added clouds. They're just white. They're just not considered yet. But you've seen me just demonstrate the fog, the sunsets, the bits and bobs that I was doing. Now, whether I actually add the sun is questionable right now, because thinking about the game I want to make, would having a sun in here actually add anything? I don't think it would, because I'm not adding a day-night cycle yet. I just want a play space that is just this. Nothing persists. It's just a quick in, bish bash bosh, out. Not maybe even just a round-based combat for the first sort of prototype to flush out bugs in the engine. So, you know, it may be a case that I just have just a ground plane soon, just a flat ground plane, and a bunch of tank bots or vehicle bots, and you shoot the bots, and that would help me debug physics, collision, projectile ray tracing. It would give me the vehicles. It would let me work on maybe shadows, very basic shadows, low poly, something below the crap, because the vehicles themselves will be low poly bits and bobs. So I have been working on sort of making myself some low poly assets. Let me see if I've got any on here. So I've got the traffic cone is a low poly asset that I've added. So the red is to mark the x-axis. And I'm going to start using these to mark out spaces and drive between them. So this is, you know, when I've got a ground plane, I can drop this shape in. In fact, if we just find There we go. Find 0, 0, which is over here. So that looks like that's floating towards us, but really we're going over the ground plane. But the ground plane itself doesn't exist. So let's create ourselves an entity. So let's create the traffic cone. There we go, traffic cone, textures, traffic shader is the standard one, and that should create me a traffic cone. Ah, it's created it with the wrong texture. That's interesting. I'm pretty sure traffic is the right texture. So let me demonstrate this. We can go into here. We can go find the traffic texture. Where is it? Traffic. View the traffic texture. That is not the right texture. Quite clearly, it is not the right texture. What happened to traffic? Let's have a look. Resources, textures, traffic. That should be the right texture. That should load and be fine. But as you can see, that did not load and is not fine. So edit with paint, file, save. Let's hit traffic again. I need to sort this, don't I? So there's something to do. So reload the traffic. It's still garbled here, look. Still garbled. Interesting. Interesting. So that's, there you go. That's something I will look at probably right now, because traffic cone worked last night. But say let's get the traffic cone itself. We know it's this traffic cone, and we can just, you know, move it around a bit, shift it out the way. It's interesting. It's placed itself like that. I wonder if, actually, thinking about it, do I want to put directional on that thing? So it's done that. Let's delete that one. Oh, the object's not going away today. Oh, I know why it's not going away. Don't worry about that one. Let's just create another one. That's interesting. Why are these changing as I move the camera? They shouldn't be changing. Oh no, they should. They're the, sorry, that's the sky dome and that's the sea, which are moving with the camera. These are the, that's the debug. Yeah, and that's the traffic cone. Whatever. Blend is true, blend false. No, so let's try creating a, yeah, the directional lighting's broken as well. Have we got just the default flat? No, let's move that out of the way. Pause X. Oh, no, they're still wrong. So there you go. I'm going to live debug that now. Or sorry, not live. I'm going to quit recording this. But yeah, I'm doing all sorts of bits and bobs, and basically the planning is the way I will figure through some of these issues. So if I now open planning, and we need to think about what we've just seen. So let's go to Sky, and from Sky we will create a bug. So these are all the tasks I've done for Sky. So Sky create, have we got one? Generate Sky triangles and colors. Sky ImGui draw. Okay, so Sky ImGui draw is going to get a bug. Name must be populated before create. Okay, and I can copy this section. I can put it there. Actually, I can just give it its color here. Let me take it here and give it a color node setting of red. And I think it's font color. Is it red? Let me find red somewhere else. Yeah, it's font color white. Yeah, duh. I knew that. Fine. paint that over the top, and then all I do is go back to my planning section, generate the planning. I've now got a red here, look. It's very useful for me to start tracking that down. I'm going to just go and create a section in a moment about the mesh manager and the creation, because I've been working on mesh manager overnight. I actually have expanded it into its own piece. So previously I had entangled objects with the actual shapes they were drawing, and I've now abstracted out the renderables, so that they're a whole other separate list of stuff, just this unordered map of things. And any thread can create a renderable at any time, and then the object is used to update the values in that mesh. So the objects, like details that come out of the physics or the AI updating the object, go into the renderable separately. And the way the culling works, I've mentioned the frustum culling and the range culling stuff, it just says, well, if this object is beyond the scope, it just stops doing these things, and the renderable never gets updated. So you're saving time, and also you never do anything if the object itself hasn't been edited. If you've already set this renderable, you don't need to set it every frame. So I'm trying to save this. This is all done with the flagging types I've got, the updated flagging types, which are trying to keep things together and together. So each object state is actually from the entity component system. For brevity and cache coherence, I update down to the registry and up from the registry once every so many frames, so that if there was a crash, I dump the registry at a set number of cadences, say every 100 frames, or every 100. No, it's actually every 180 frames, or every 360 frames, depending on how your machine's doing, and that's what would be restored. If you crash, that's what would be restored, or at least that's the plan. And this is the current running state, and these, as you can see, are standard structs. They're almost pod, except for the list, and they are flat. I mean, the actual list is effectively just a local cache, and will be, upon reload, repopulated, because I don't persist the state of is renderable created, because they're not, if they're not created on restore, when it comes into update the object, it creates the renderables for the first time and then updates them for the first time. It clears the edited flag and then runs through the update functions. Now the update functions list on an object are interesting, because I'm soon going to be, and I've talked about this briefly, the AI side of things, or the player side of things. If the player is in an object, say an aircraft, and they set the throttle to 10 kilometers a second, we want 10 kilometers a second to be added to their direction, whatever direction they happen to be facing. That command becomes an update function that we add to the object, and when they remove that control, they remove that thrust, sure enough, we remove that update function. Now, it sounds a bit wasteful, but actually we're just moving ownership of the possible update functions from a list of known possible actions that are guarded. So if there's no fuel state, or the fuel level state guards the thrust state. You can't add thrust with no fuel. It will be a bit more complex than this. So it will be, without the fuel, you can't turn on the engine. Without the engine, you can't set the thrust. Without the thrust, you're not going to move. That kind of stuff. And then the physics side of things, thrust less the drag. We're going to be working on building up this structure and tree. This will all be controlled live in the engine, just like the colour of the sky, the colour of the waves. But before all that, there's a whole bunch of stuff to do first. There's a whole pantheon of things here that I want to work with. Shader Manager had a bit of work. The debug cube systems had a piece of work. Why do I want debug cubes? So I want to be able to soon cross into them and change their color on the fly. So I'll be changing that. Perlin Noise, as you can see, had some love here. I want to create a 3D terrain mesh from the Perlin Noise. I've actually started doing that, but whatever. Sky had a lot of love. Fog had a lot of love. Water, I haven't updated this yet, but the water stuff, I have been playing with this. You've seen it in there, but it's not what I've been doing. It's more this top section, this study of water in other titles. So if I go back to my reference material, I can go back to Sky. This is literally where I've been looking at things that inspire me to make my Sky. So I started with 90s flight sim stuff that I'm really interested in, that I want to make things more foggy. And while I was thinking about this, I remembered how I just loved EF2000. I just loved it. I really, really loved EF2000. It's the first flight sim I remember flying around in my PC, which I think was a 486 SX250 at the time. And I looked down and to the right, and I saw a convoy. And I got cleared hot by the controller for this convoy and dropped cluster munitions on them from altitude, but with like a laser lock on. There was no AA in the area. There was just a group of vehicles moving down a valley, and I just remember it going off and good splash, and it was a really visceral experience. I mean, there's some problems with this, like this is a missile right against the pipes, but yeah, it was an interesting game. But it was this look of the fog here, this grey, cloudy, you know, just threw something up for me. Now here's a Sky that influenced my Sky design quite a bit. Obviously this is dithered, but mine's undithered. But yeah, it's very simple. Tiny Combat Arena, you'll see a very similar banding of the Sky here, but they seem to have this is maybe the seat. This I have never played Tiny Combat Arena. I probably should. I love the comically outsized missile here, but you'll see. This is MiG-29, I think, isn't it? I don't know, but yeah, you'll see that the sky sort of blends to a line that is the horizon. I quite like the sea design here more. I needed to look more at it, but I kept seeing this banding, blurring to a fog in the distance, and this you can do. And obviously that was with the sea, but then you've got a straight line with the sky. So mine already looks like this. If I just put a ground plane in, which is perhaps something I'll do today, I will be able to do this. Now, I quite also like, they've got blended bits here. Now, if I don't know if this is going to work for me, but I had an example of blended grass bundle. There you go. Shader, brambling, I think, might be brambling, I don't know. Brambling, texture, grass 2, I think. No material. Create. And you can see I've got blending built in. There you go. So that's it is a massive piece of grass, but it's a piece of grass with blending nonetheless. There's actually multiple planes here. It was the old trick of multiple planes overlapping side by side. So there's a plane here, plane there, just to add me a blended piece of grass. So I'd already got some of these technologies ready to go, because this is, whether this is texture, vertex point or not. I mean, these might be vertices. These might be instances. I don't have instance rendering, which is probably useful for me. I want to look at that because the trees are identical look and the grass bundles are identical. So yeah, there's those inspirations, but they're already known technologies. If you've, same picture twice, but if you look at any flight sim from the 90s, they all use that, but so do other games. It's just ground clutter. F-16, that was another one. I thought F-16 looked fantastic back in the day. It can't be denied. And then there's retro games, so Atari ST stuff, you know, F-19. I remember F-19 quite a lot. It's not the only one. There was Armageddon as well. From Psygnosis. Psygnosis. Armageddon Psygnosis. Get some images. There aren't any, but yeah, here's the title of it. Let's just mute this. So whether this is recording, I don't know. Yeah. So if I just, you'll see the low poly style. It's extremely low poly, but you'll see the sky itself didn't have any color. It was just a single color, and even at night, it was just one single color. So yeah, I quite liked Armageddon on the Atari ST, but it didn't come part of the study. Another one with solid colour to the horizon is Carrier Command, the game that I myself began to write many years ago, a remake of. So I always loved Carrier Command. I loved the fact that I found some meta gaming within Carrier Command. So I found that you could use the long range comms pod on an aircraft with another aircraft in flight. You would go absolute minimum speed in the aircraft, and you go absolute maximum speed in the Walrus assault craft. And I would send 4 of these, half my complement, so 2 Walrus, 1 standard Walrus with the virus bomb, and the other Walrus with the fuel payload, and then the 2 aircraft. So the first aircraft would, you'd get to location at a distant island far away from your carrier, and I would use the 1 aircraft to suppress all the air defences, keeping the other one flying around the 2 Walrus, and then I would send the Walrus with the virus bomb in to take over the island. If it needed the fuel, the second Walrus with the fuel pod would give the fuel. Sometimes I didn't need that buddy store wasn't required, but there was no aircraft buddy stores. So what I would do is I would have to ensure, to get the aircraft back, I would have to ensure that the airfield at the other island didn't get very damaged, and so it would quickly be taken over and have an airfield. I could land the 2 Mantas at the airfield and they would get refueled. And that was, to me, the height of metagaming when I first got my Atari ST. I loved it. So yeah, this was the look I was looking at originally, just a colour to the sky, but I preferred the branding. I looked at the new version of Carrier Command, again, a game I've never played. What I took out of them was I really like their cliffs and stuff, and I have a couple of white papers I want to read about this cliffing. I quite like the idea of this sort of low poly terrain up and in. I noticed trees here. I'll talk about those again in a moment. So if I go back to my engine, and we go back in here, I don't know if it's enabled still. Nah, so it's not. But I have Voronoi, Vornori, cell creation as well as Perlin. And what I was going to do was overlay some Voronoi cells as forests. Well, you know, which kind of tree was in them, that kind of stuff. And this style of low poly tree, a trunk with basically branchiness above, was where I was going to. The other thing I noticed in this one was, of course, this is rain. I hadn't thought about rain, but we'll see. They, of course, the new Microprose and the publisher have the copyright for Carrier Command, so it's just an inspiration for me. It's not what I'm actually doing anymore. I couldn't find real-time game software anywhere. I do recall the work that Martin G. Bell did. Shout out to Martin G. Bell. You can find interviews with him and his work on Way Back When Machine. But yeah, we'll see. And yeah, we'll just see what we're going to. So I was looking at scattering. I was looking at some of this Kelvin Van Hoof stuff. I saw is it Flight Gear Sky OpenGL something or other. Yeah, this. So I saw this on Flight Gear. This is their old way of creating the dome. Now my way of creating a dome is very different. So if I go to my Sky Manager, you can actually see that I've got a default of 36 by 36. If I rotate my camera up, minimize this to give us a bit of space. So I can create just a different one. So let me create different one. Fade slices. So right, so the number of slices from the sky to the ground is the number of pancakes on top of each other, basically, number of horizontal slices. So if we go for 100 slices, each of them needs a number of divisions. That's the number of vertical splits that go around. So we can actually give it 100 slices, but only 16 divisions. And then the bottom 10 of them, so 10% of the sky, will be the fade from the apex to the horizon. And then we create that sky dome. And then we go different one. You get this very different look and feel to the sky. And if I go into object state and turn on wireframe, you'll see how strange that is. We should go to, I didn't want to create again, whoopsie daisy. But if I go to default, I don't know which one's the default sky. That's that one? No. That one? Ah, that one. That is not what I thought was happening. So you'll see it looks like this. So yeah, go back to the tropical one. That's very similar. But then if we did 100 by 100 and make the apex a very obvious colour and the horizon a very horrible colour. That one. And then we go different 2, create, and then we hit different 2. Oh, that's actually completely balked. But you'll see, actually I don't know why that's gone black. You can see the horizon is that colour. I don't know why that's balked itself. But anyway, you can see the wireframing gets changed as we go around. And I found this last night, so I'd already done all my work with my sky like a week ago. And then I found this stuff, and this is where it got me thinking, do I actually want the sun involved? Do I want to think about the sun going over or drawing clouds at all? So I'm not sure for my first pass of an actual playable space whether I want to bother. But this is a bit out of date. This is from an early version of Flight Gear, but it's an interesting read nonetheless. I hope seeing sort of my planning documents and my style of working is just keeping things in my head so I can just brain dump. You can see that dot is perfect, just a brain dump. Absolutely, just brain dump it all in there. And I don't need to worry about a specific tool to do it. This is just a text document and then a batch file to reprocess my planning in here. And I just get a document and a HTML file that I can look at, and it's just dot -t png -o planning png from planning dot. Job done. I can also do this in Linux if I want to. My Linux code has been rotting a little bit. I did spend a little bit of time updating some of the OpenGL rendering on Linux. I have neglected the Vulkan whole side of this for a while. I've just stuck to DirectX 11 and OpenGL. So they're the two live versions. It may only be OpenGL or Vulkan by the end of things, because I just want to maintain one code base for now. I'm learning an awful lot about areas of engines that I myself don't play with in my day-to-day life. So there's 35 minutes rambling about the state of my engine, a lot of live demonstrations and bits and bobs. There's going to be a whole bunch of stuff I need to do in Blender. There's going to be a whole bunch of stuff I need to do just to create some of these scenes. And this afternoon I'm going to play about with just a default ground plane. So this has inspired me, the picture of Tiny Combat Arena, just to have a default ground plane close up to the player. I also need to look at tessellation. What is this? This is a Jaguar. This is a British plane, a Jaguar attack aircraft, which is a supersonic attacker. Seen a few of them in real life. There you go. I will speak to you all very, very soon. Bye bye.